AskReddit by Sing Like Tina Turner. Hospital workers of Reddit, what happens there that's hidden but that we should know about? Not really hidden and kinda minor, but I'll say it anyways. I deliver food to patients and it's not hard to tell when someone is on their way out. Could be simply not being hungry, or could be the inability to eat. Had one patient who hadn't eaten anything off their tray for 3 days straight. The last time I delivered to them, they smiled and gave me a wink. Next day, they were gone. It's rough seeing these things happen in real time. I'm a grown-ass man who doesn't cry often, but it always leaves me feeling extra empty picking up the untouched trays and replacing them with another tray that I know will stay untouched as well. I worked in a hospital doing the same thing for about 3 months. They put me on the cancer ward and the amount of people that were absolutely terrified about dying was a lot. I would just put their tray down and hold their hand and tell them it would be peaceful in the end. Not sure if I was allowed to do that, but what else? Didn't know that was in the job description, and as someone that is afraid of death, it was pretty scary sometimes. Sometimes when people die we just put an oxygen mask on them and wheel them through the corridors. Less distressing for other patients and visitors to think they are asleep rather than see a body with a sheet over it. Unexpected. But understandable. Now I'll always wonder though. The hospital I work at has these big square covers. When I first started, I would see transport staff pushing these things around the halls. I thought they were food trays, or large boxes of hospital equipment. Turns out it's a structured bed cover, so when they are transporting a deceased patient to the morgue, it doesn't look like a person under a sheet. OMG, that's what those are? I've seen those things a lot in hospitals. I guess that makes sense, though. An ambulance ride is not a one-way ticket to the front of the line. You still get triaged and could be rolled right to the waiting room if you're non-emergent. Had a patient check in for a broken toe, stubbed and owie. Got mad that he waited 45 minutes. Fully the kind of night where the people in the waiting room should be glad they are in the waiting room because it means they are not actively dying. This guy walked out and called an ambulance to take him from the walk-in entrance to the ambulance bay, where my charge nurse put him in a wheelchair and wheeled him right back into the waiting room. It was beautiful to watch how angry he got. I haven't seen it on here yet, may have missed it, but I'll add. You, as a patient, have every right to refuse any test or treatment or even leave. At any time. For any reason, unless a harm to self or others. That's different, at least in the US. Added bonus you should know, leaving against medical advice does not mean insurance will not pay for the care you've received. Your insurance will still be billed the same as anyone else who stayed the whole time till discharge. But if you leave with an IV in your arm, we will call the police to find you and bring you back to remove it, because of drug abuse. Counterpoint, if you are in a psych halt, they will say you are allowed to leave at any time, but they have the final say on whether you can leave, even if you go involuntarily. A friend of mine had that happen. Surgeon here. We listen to music in the OR. Most people seem surprised when they hear that. I'll never forget my time as a student tech clearing shots by LMFAO during a spinal surgery. Removed. This is the stuff that lets me know I wouldn't last in healthcare. I have such a weak stomach, I gag at everything even remotely gross. I'd have thrown up. You were horrified and the patient was probably horrified too. Good on you for being so professional and nonchalant about it. I got a fast bleep, i.e. drop everything you're doing and attend this emergency please. One night to a side room on the ward to find no patient in the bed. Was just about to leave the room and go back out to the nurse's station, where there had been a bit of a hubbub when I dashed past the first time, when something caught my eye. Looked up to see a face with wide, slightly wild psych eyes peering down at me from a gap in the ceiling tiles. She was a lady waiting for a bed in the psych hospital who'd clearly thought the ceiling was the best place to hide from the people trying to poison her. Honestly can't think of another occasion that I've been quite so terrified. Worst thing was that I had to walk, well, back out underneath her to get help from the nurses and security to get her down. Yeah, worked at a psych hospital where no one on a specialized unit did rounds for over an hour, and it ended up with the clinical director paying a kid $40 to come down out of the ceiling. If you come into the ER drunk, there is guaranteed a pool of bets on your blood alcohol level, possibly with odds if there's a pharmacist available to do the math for us. My all-time high was 0.52. The veteran nurses were shocked by this number and said they had never seen anyone have such a high bowel. They were also shocked he didn't die. He slept for about 8 hours, woke up annoyed, then fled. If you register in the ER and tell the triage nurse that your problem is personal, we know you're here because of something genital or anal related. Edit. A lot of we healthcare workers have seen a lot. If you're not truthful at triage, your care might be less prompt when it's a true medical emergency. It is possible to die of embarrassment. You won't believe it, doc, but I tripped and fell on the baseball bat. Now it's stuck up my ass. In the ICU you spend a lot of time keeping corpses alive until their family comes around or their body gives out. Oh, Jesus ain't ready for her yet. Yes, Jesus is ready for her, we're just actively delaying it. People don't want to withdraw care because we shouldn't play God. The decision of whether or not to play God is one we've already made. This person would have died long ago had we not intervened many times over. We've been playing God. The question we need to ask is, what kind of God do we want to be? Merciful or needlessly cruel? You are doing your 90-year-old grandmother a great disservice by making her a full code. She will not survive CPR and her death will be significantly more traumatic because of it. My last hospital roommate was 95 and had a severely infected kidney. She wouldn't survive the surgery to get it removed, but her family went on and on about how the doctors' nurses were purposely murdering her for not doing the surgery. It was the immunocompromised room, so whoever entered had to mask and gown. A family member took off their mask and gave both of us COVID. Instead of passing away comfortably in hospice, she died unable to breathe. I almost died as well. I help patients to the bathroom non-stop all day. The amount of patients that just leave the bathroom without washing their hands is disgusting. If I didn't hear the sink or soap dispenser, your ass is getting led right to an alcohol hand station. I'm always shocked how poorly people wipe their asses. We don't care what your dick, vagina, boobs etc look like. I have seen literally thousands and can't remember any of them, except for the one guy whose dick tip was touching his knee. Edit. My comment was not saying that people should be comfortable being naked in front of us, or that we won't do our best to maintain your level of comfort and keep you as cover as possible. Yo, what? That patient families will do anything to keep the patient alive for their own comfort instead of abiding by the doctor's orders. For example, feeding an intubated patient a hamburger because he's hungry when they are already getting tube fed and ordered not to interfere with the vent or trach. This has resulted in many patient deaths than you think. They're always hungry, mom. Peepaw hasn't wanted to eat more than 3 bites of pudding for the last 6 months and he weighs 90 pounds, which is also how many years he has inhabited this earthly plane. He has been barely conscious for the last 4 days. I'm not coming back later to do yet another swallow eval that entails poking Peepaw in the face with an oral swab and declaring him not alert enough to participate. I once found a wad of melted flaming hot Cheetos in the mouth of a lethargic dementia patient. I thought they were bleeding, but nope, just Cheeto dust. People have such serious denial about the end of life. Some families reject death so much, they beg the doctors and nursing staff to do life-saving measures on their 95-year-old grandma who has cancer everywhere and is begging for death. It's just unacceptable. When my dad was dying of cancer, all of my siblings and my mother were wanting all measures on my father who had cancer ravaging his brain. I was the only one on the doctor's side begging them to let him pass. They hardly talk to me anymore and act like I killed him with my bare hands. When he was much younger, he constantly told us how he wanted to pass with dignity and how he never wanted to languish on the edge. In most older hospitals, the pharmacy is just a couple of feet away from the morgue. Where I work, the morgue, pharmacy, patient cafeteria, and employee cafeteria are contiguous. If you sit there on your phone the whole time the mother of your child is in labor such that a nurse has to step in and fulfill the supportive role instead, yeah, everyone knows and you're getting judged by the whole unit. My husband left to go home the day I had my daughter. It was an extremely hard and traumatic labor and birth for me. I remember crying for hours because I was exhausted and really wanted him there. Word got around and my nurses were short and cold when he came back the next day. His reasoning? They didn't provide meals for him. Had he asked he would have known they would bring him sandwiches and stuff from the nurses station. Our daughter has since passed and I don't think he has a deeper regret that now. I know one. I used to manage hospital laundry services. Medical waste, body parts etc. gets accidentally thrown in the laundry more often than you'd expect. Also needles and all sorts of other medical devices and personal items. Once we even had a deceased fetus come through to the sorting facility. Used to do laundry in a physical rehab nursing facility. The amount of figurative and literal shit that I've seen in the laundry is astonishing. Like they really do not check before they launch it into a bag and haul it down to the laundry room. Some of the more notable ones were a TV remote, a lighter, both of which went through the washer and dryer, and an honest to God turd in a plastic Ziploc bag. It's not uncommon for families to abandon elderly members at the hospital. They will straight up ghost or at least will be polite enough to say they won't give any assistance to us in placing them in a nursing home, so Adult Protective Services will get involved and make them a ward of the state. This process can take weeks to months, so these abandoned people just live in the hospital and take up the resources that could be used treating sick people. There are also many families that keep elderly members in unsafe living conditions so they can continue to take their social security checks for personal use. Sometimes the family is in an impossible situation. We think of all elderly folks as docile and kind, but dementia can turn anyone into a menace. I didn't abandon my dad anywhere, but I did have to choose between caring for him and keeping my small kids safe. People abusing nurses, and when the nurses report it, nothing happens. Nurses deserve safety and the attackers deserve accountability. I have been hospitalized a bunch of times and the majority of nurses, I actually can only think of one who wasn't, are amazing, competent and also overworked. I have heard them getting verbally abused by patients or family members in the adjacent rooms. I don't understand people. I have always been appreciative of the care they've given me and been friendly with them to the point where at times they've come in my room to just get away from the crazies for a few minutes or to chat during the very limited free time they might have. Nurses deserve a big round of applause. That all the sweet treats and food you bring in for the units to eat usually only go to day shift and night shift gets left out of yummy goodness. Noted. Bring 2 trays, 1 for night shift. Someone died in the bed you're sitting in. Yes, this. I was shook the first time I had a patient die, and within the hour after we did post-mortem care and took the patient away, they had a new patient for us in that same bed. Most don't judge as much as you may think. As for myself, a former medical professional, I don't care what drugs you take or how much you drink, I just want the truth so I can provide the best plan of care for you. For example, if you're an alcoholic or addicted to benzos, I need to know to prepare for possible withdrawals that can become deadly. I went to the ER once because I was puking blood, and at the time I was drinking a heavy amount every day. The DR asked me and I told him straight up how much and that I'm an alcoholic, and he kinda paused before saying thank you for being honest with me. Do you want help with that today? I've never understood lying about it if I'm there for something that could very well be caused from it. Edit. Word. More often than not, They are beyond short-staffed. When nurses MDs etc are laughing joking with each other, it is a coping mechanism. We aren't trying to be rude, we are compartmentalizing the trauma that we see all day every day. If we don't lighten the load we would cry all day and never come back to work. It's literally the only way to watch a baby die and then deal with screaming Karen next door without punching them in the face. Scrubs Season 2, Episode 6. Dr. Cox's speech about why we make jokes describes it perfectly. That is why we distance ourselves, that's why we make jokes. We don't do it because it's fun. We do it so we can get by. And sometimes, because it's fun. But mostly it's the getting by thing. There is sex and drama, but not in a Grey's Anatomy way, more of an overgrown high schoolers shoved together in really stressful situations way. And not as much sex as Grey's, though maybe I'm just ugly and not in on the scene. I work for a hospital as the guy who does the discipline and terminations. Outside of people just straight up not coming to work anymore, these are most of my cases. Employee X sleeps with employee Y, new employee shows up and starts sleeping with employee Y, and now employee X is fighting the new person in the hallway at 6 AM. Also, a lot more nurses and doctors show up to work under the influence of drugs and alcohol than you can imagine. Lots of people would die if the pharmacists weren't there. They do so much in hospitals that no one even realizes they do. The nurses have no control over your food trays. Do everything to keep them alive only serves the family's feelings, not the patient. I am a bereavement midwife. In the morgue, there are fridges that are specially designed for and only ever contain babies or children under a year old. I've had to transfer babies down there and I hate it when there is another baby there, but I feel relief that the baby I've transferred isn't alone. I know that sounds weird. I think it sounds kind. In the US, insurance companies are buying up doctor practices, urgent care centers, minute clinics, surgery centers, and pharmacies. This is centralizing all the profit under an organization notorious for screwing over medical providers and patients alike, and there's a real risk of insurance companies steering their customers towards centers owned by that insurance company without transparency. Hospitals are corrupt enough, but imagine receiving care at one owned by United Health. The hospitals also want to become insurance companies. This is the only way they can actually cut providers out of the revenue stream entirely. If insurance is paying, the provider's documentation generates the bill. But if a hospital system achieves clinically integrated network status, they negotiate directly with employers to insure lives rather than accept payments. Then the incentive to provide care other than ration care reverses. Then all the hospital need do is maintain some arbitrary benchmarks of adequate health and do nothing more for the patients unless it is demanded by someone. They collect the dollars up front and enrich the business and management class of employees with bonuses for cutting staff and thereby are ensuring less care delivery. Most hospitals are dangerously understaffed and cut from very important areas, such as cleaners. So take that information and do with it as you will. Best guess is at least 25% of any all equipment is not in good functioning order. A whole lot of unnecessary suffering that families bring upon their supposed loved ones. Imagine how horrified you'd be if your friend told you they are putting their elder dog Luna on a ventilator because, after her aging achy hips failed her and they did a hip replacement, Luna got pneumonia. Of course she can't eat anymore, so they will put a feeding tube in her and feed her. Then they will have people clean her up when she shits on herself, but at least they don't have to worry that she will pee on herself because after the pneumonia her kidneys failed and now she's on dialysis. They visit her a couple times each week because they love her. No, that's considered inhumane to do to a dog. We do it to millions of elderly humans though. You should have heard the backlash I got when I admitted that I believed medically assisted suicide should be an option for, at minimum, terminal patients. I don't think I've ever offended so many people at once. We actually really care about you. You want a number to us, and when you have an unexpected outcome, we grieve and have to support each other and have care conferences to process our feelings. Sometimes we even need some time off of work to emotionally recover. I never knew how much doctors and nurses really cared until I became one. I work in outpatient specialty pharmacy, which means we do a lot of discharge meds and oral chemotherapy. Insurance is the biggest scam and actively makes patient outcomes significantly worse because they delay treatment or put insane limits on the meds they will cover. There are lots of cancer patients who die while waiting on their insurance to cover the medication they need to survive. On the off chance I ever see any health insurance executives, it's on site. They are evil corporations, and I would personally beat the shit out of every single one of them if I got the chance. Nurses can be forced, mandated, to work 16-hour shifts if there's no other coverage. Many hospitals are understaffed, and they will be extremely tired and make mistakes. If your state tries to pass a law for safe nursing ratios, please vote for it. As an X-ray tech, I can't tell you what's wrong if you ask me if I see anything on your X-rays because it's not in our scope of practice, but yeah, we definitely know. And if it's particularly gruesome, we like to show off how pretty our images came out to other techs, lol. Not officially anyways, but I've had a few myself where they were like, off the record, your ankle looks fucked. Just because the person seeing you is professional in the room about your weird issue doesn't mean they aren't walking out of there and telling other staff members all about that person that slipped on a bottle and it went in their ass. No names are used to avoid HIPAA violations, but chances are within an hour the entire floor will know about it. I worked in an admin department in a detached building on the hospital campus, and I even heard stories. A lot of people also don't realize how deeply integrated some software is. All your other doctors and medical providers could potentially see those ER notes too. Note: not a hospital worker, but someone who regularly made deliveries to multiple hospitals. The nurses and doctors have separate break rooms, which might not be surprising, but the staggering difference in quality is shocking. The nurses' break room is dingy, overcrowded, and maybe has some water that they can drink. Meanwhile, the doctor's break room is fully stocked with food and beverage, spacious, and meticulously clean. You can refuse treatment. If you don't want to take a medication, have a surgery, or any other type of medical treatment, you can refuse. I will never forget talking to a 90-year-old lady who didn't want a procedure, but didn't realize she didn't have to do what the doctor told her to. She was mentally competent and just didn't know she could refuse. Your body, your choice. I'm a 54-year-old physician with no health issues. I am DNRDNI. Fuck that chest compression intubation shit, let me go. Dead bodies are moved to the morgue in special stretchers. You can't see the person at all. It just looks like an empty stretcher. IDK, what fancy hospital you work at? Every ED I worked at would place patients in a white bag and cover them with a sheet. That I've walked into an ICU room to see a patient on a ventilator, bloated to 3x their normal size with fluid leaking from their pores, and I was to draw blood. Looking at me with suffering eyes, begging pretty much to die, I walked right back out and told them the specimen was unable to be obtained. I'm not sticking another needle into anyone suffering so greatly in their last moments of life. We have mice in the lab, and they're not for experimentation. How often we have to hide how we are made to feel. Patients blame staff for systemic issues. It's not your nurse's fault the wait time is long. It's not the individual staff that created the big picture issue. Most of us are trying our best in an unappreciated field and are here trying to help. They're dangerously short-staffed and short-supplied. I shouldn't have to fucking hunt down knife pumps, and I shouldn't be managing multiple high acuity situations that clearly call for one-on-one management. Patients get charged for top-notch nursing care regardless of the fact that I can't physically provide it due to being one singular person. Everything falls on the direct care staff. No housekeeping, guess who's swinging a mop? Nutritional services are short, guess who's handing out trays? Security is short and a patient in psychological crisis is strangling their roommate, guess who has less help intervening? If we are short ancillary staff, then it's just the RNs to pick up the slack. Oh, the amount of plastic that enters the world from one hospital.